Wow. Yeah, because then I was like, I just got.
Okay, so we just get started. Right, thank you so much. Thank you for your patience this morning. We know it went over a bit, but I think Mike was just so good to listen to, isn't he? So we sort of just thought we'd give it time. Sharon, as usual, I'm sure you did this last time I got up. She asked me the question that it's almost like I prompted her to ask the question. So she was talking about next steps, and she was talking about, you know, going forward, what that means in terms of training and everything. So we'll do that this afternoon. It's a wee bit later on. But really, that's what this whole afternoon is about, actually. So coming back, I've asked Kira to put up this slide. You might remember it from level 1. Do you remember this? So thinking about the research that sits behind Rnvr. So Yuri Weinblatt talks about how to move people along. Now, we've talked about the importance of supporters. They're incredibly important with regard to your campaign. It's also quite important, we've talked about communication. So you might actually, depending on how big your system is, how big your establishment is, but you might almost be thinking to yourself, okay, in terms of my staff, in terms of the staff around the child that I'm thinking of, or the department I'm thinking of, or whatever, you know, obviously, like think about somewhere like Linwood High, a lot of you here, your head teachers are fully supportive. Then, and so are you, obviously, and then you think about staff who's partially supportive. So if it was a particular child, if they had an asthma, it'd be incredibly important to get that asthma to the point where they were at least partially, if not fully supportive, etc., etc. I suppose if you've got a big staff and you can think in your head that there are some people who are wholly negative, you know, that is quite a tricky situation for you to be in. So that's basically what we're going to talk about this afternoon, is what do we do if we have naysayers, what we call them? Skeptics, that's the word. Skeptics.
I've never seen in the room that goes, wow.
So that's a really good one. And then that person who, well, we used to do that, we've done that, it didn't work. That's the archivist. Yeah. So you get lots of sort of thoughts around this, but at the end of the day, you've heard us on and on. We're NVRing everybody, right? So the system is like an onion. So we're NVRing the child, but we're also NVRing ourselves. When Mike said, passionate yourself, you know, there's no way we're going to be violent towards ourselves the way we think of things. Similarly, obviously, we're going to be non-violent towards our colleagues. And we're also going to be aware that we sometimes get emotionally blocked to colleagues, etc., etc. So everything to do with NVR that is to do with the family and the child, we're now thinking about as part of the system, right? So all of the things about strict balance hold, autopilot states, etc., etc., these can all be applied to your system, to your colleagues, because it's quite expected that people will take time to come on board with something like this. Exactly what Michael said, you know, children are very escalated, dysregulated, and then the first thing you suggest is that you sort of do something loving towards them. I mean, a lot of people struggle with those kind of ideas. So the good news is, and we probably have experienced this very much so, that you can move people along, and realistically you should expect to move a supporter along 2 positions. I suppose if you were in a school and you, after trying to sort this out a bit, you still had people who were wholly negative, you would be a wee bit concerned about that. But if you start to do your campaign around communication around NVR and how you do that, we can talk about that a little bit. And you can move people up even to being neutral, and that's really, really good. So this tends to be our experience, is that we can get people up to being neutral if they become wholly negative. You know, certainly not everybody's wholly negative. It's often quite the case that, say, a partner, if it's a family, sometimes the partner thinks this is a load of, you know, or a granny or whatever, and then we do a lot of communication with them, and then they might just agree to sort of keep out of it and not stick their oar in, and then they sort of observe, and then they see things improving, and then they move further up the scale. So it's very common that we see that if you have somebody who digs their feels in it wholly negative, something else is going on behind the behaviour. You have to think about that, you think about your relational gestures, etc., etc. But let's hope that that doesn't happen within your system. And it's something that we'll talk later on this afternoon about what practitioner inquiry looks like. And I think, I don't know about you, but sometimes when I hear practitioner inquiry, my heart sinks and thinks, well, there's another thing I've got to do. But the way we're hoping to construct it is that it come back to us and we do reconnectors where you're able to say, right, I'm just going to be honest, I've got 15 members of staff, and, you know, 12 of them have managed to move on and 3 of them I'm really stuck with. Let's talk about that. Let's make a plan So the idea is that the practitioner inquiry is just about you having a go and you getting support. So this might be one of the things that you do have to think about within your establishment. Right, so we've got a wee task for you to do, which you might all want to like kill me, but we put this in here, didn't we?
Yeah.
We designed it this way. We didn't, it was supposed to be this morning. But anyway, because you'll all be half asleep now that you've got postprandial fatigue and what that is, yeah, when you're something you're tired. So this is how to spark you up. So we're going to put you in trios and we're going to get so somebody's going to be a skeptic, and don't be kind of random about it. Do think about the kinds of things you've heard say about Rnvr, or the kinds of things to say about children. We don't have to be outlandish. I think it's just people struggle, don't they? So somebody's a skeptic, and you're you going back trying to get people on board, and we're going to have somebody observing as well. And I'll just do it randomly in case, unless anybody really doesn't want to do any role play. But the observer thing's quite good because it does mean that that person can kind of pick up on any things that are going on. And then we'd ask the observer to feed back to us. It could be that we change roles. We'll just see how we got on. But we might just start off doing it once. Shane's nodding very positive. Everybody else is looking like they're going to kill me. So yes. So have we still got enough to do trios? Yes. Great. Okay. Should we mix you up or should we keep it together? You tell us. You're not children. So. So if we did you three together and just decide who's A, B, and C, and I will tell you which is which. And then would you go over, in fact, you go Sharon, that sounds brilliant. And would you join them as well? Yes. And then you'd be a trio too, is that okay? And just decide who's A, B, and C within your little trio. Okay, so you decided who's A, B, and C? That's the easy part, so let's hope you manage that. So put your hands up if you're A. You're the skeptic. Put your hands up if you're B. You're the observer. Put your hands up if you're C. You're the persuader or the Rnvr person. Okay, right? Okay, we'll give you 5 minutes to begin with, and then you can tell us how you got on. All right, starting now. Okay, can I stop? Is that enough time? Well done. Did you all role play or did somebody just discuss it?
Loving a scenario.
Okay, so we'll get the observer to reflect first, and then we'll get you to talk about what, in fact, no, we won't. We'll get the person who was trying to persuade, sort of leader, to tell us how you felt, first of all. And then we'll sort of move on to something else. So, who was the persuader here? You were. How did it feel?
Wee bit attacked. You can recognise their back is up and not agreeing with you.
Her back was up.
How
did you feel? Did you feel?
Did
you feel as though your back got up? Not really.
No, more so I felt I really need to tackle this. I recognise that there's a problem and I need to try and tackle this.
So you felt responsible.
Yeah. It's also quite hard to remain calm.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose, like, I've worked with Michael before, and I always look at him and think,
that's exactly what we were saying.
It's his man. Yeah, and I actually keep thinking, why would you going to say that? But he never ever.
That's because Michael uses the rule of one.
Yeah.
We know this. It's obviously it works.
I was trying to think of how I would approach the situation and remain calm, but when you're faced with that, it's quite hard not to match them as well. And
Sharon, here's another one. What's that? 3 words, one for you. We all channel our inner mind.
I think the other thing I felt was always have to have a solution.
Yes.
So everything to Vicky said, I think, like, what the only bit we didn't really get to would be that I would have said, you know, how can I help you in this, or can I unpack it further?
So you were going to go to the
Yeah, so it was the next step we were going to do, and we started just talking about the situation in general, but I would probably like to the how can I help you and try and get a strategy.
Yours as well might be different. You met me as a skeptic in a staff group with an audience versus me as a skeptic alone, you know, and as a one-to-one discussion, and just how you may be in an audience with an audience, but you're kind of looking for allies almost sometimes as well. And you were saying how you're drawn towards people that think like you know.
So you're uniting as well.
Yeah, and that actually being in situations where I've been the only person saying something in this kind of way and having a feel everybody's kind of, you're kind of looking for somebody to save you. You know, that whole idea of how do you manage a skeptic in a crowd versus how you might do it individually, and it might be perceived that the crowd is harder, but sometimes the individual one-on-one can be very intense if you're feeling under pressure constantly to find an answer, to fix things.
Yes, I think you're telling the leader to find allies, but actually what you're saying is that you could actually, I could see that happening, that people could actually find allies in the staff to take up the next position. So it's a good point. Particularly it's a big staff. Okay, so that was you as leader. Who was the leader here? How did you find it? So you felt a bit attacked as well?
Like you say, it's really hard. Like, you might look on the outside, but inside you're definitely not calm. But it was really interesting. Yeah, but not inside. But it was really interesting because it took me right into school, and we've had like 4 or 5 years of real kind of turmoil with staff, like the relationship. I've been trying to work on it, and it's a heck of a lot better, but good to see them, you're still here. And I simply did what I do with that type of member status. I stopped trying to provide solution because I knew that at this point in the conversation, you're not ready. Whatever I say, even if it was, do you want to take 2 weeks off? That's not going to be. You want the answer. Exactly. So, I answered the staff, well, is there something that you've done with similar people in the past that you feel did work? Because I was looking for her to give me something that I could then take that wee nugget and go, right, well, you've given me that, let's build on that wee tiny thing, because if you've said it, then you can't go back on it, it was your thing. I instantly was putting it all back on her, which I don't know what that felt like to you, other than maybe I was just floundering, but I just stopped trying to give solution right away when I saw your demeanour and the way that you were coming at me, because I thought there's no point. And that's what I would do in work right now with particular members of staff, because I just find that to be. I think it's what makes them sometimes stop and think, because I'm not coming back at them with it, so they can't then come back and go, no. But also it just slows things down a wee bit for me with those members of staff, so I've just automatically gone to that with you.
So that's really good, and you've given us some solutions there as well, which I think the observer will also point out too. But just kind of to begin with, how you felt. So you felt a bit attacked as well, and you could feel yourself sort of
definitely not
like that. But you're also saying actually it's quite a familiar situation, so you've kind of been through it before. It's brilliant because you build your not easy. And then the leader in this group was yourself. How did you find that, Alison?
I found it quite under pressure. Definitely it's an answer to giving information. And I was a little overwhelmed, underprepared. I can't get a person like, you know, even if I have it written down, but I like to, if I'm going to a tricky situation, I like here's people that catch you on the hood. Right? I always get in a bit like, I can speak in 10 minutes. I can't think what I'm going to do.
Especially when it's
brand newish.
Yeah,
Well, anyway,
That's
so
like-
kind of like try to bring it from your notebook into the front of your head.
What you're saying is sort of strike while iron's cold.
yeah, yeah.
So I think again, if we embody in here, we let ourselves embody it, take a breath, you know, then absolutely that's right. So you could just laugh, you know,
Yeah.
say
I didn't show him anything this last
Yeah.
week. So it's all I thought the NVR about. I started with oh, relational gestures and what's that mean? Getting on board, and I was like, oh, be kind. And then it's something that actually the benefit of it like taking on with a conversation about it. I just think you'd probably be down with a coaching route.
yes.
Similar to yours, Amanda, more about that could put back on them. So you're not necessarily got an answer because you actually would say a lot.
Yeah.
And so I could then probably get myself prepared and go a bit more and like use information.
Yeah. You could have got yourself out of that role play by just saying, well, I'll talk to you about it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right, so stopping there and go back again to the observer was. I'm sure you were wasted as an observer, but anyway.
Yeah, no, just psychological.
Tell us what you think. What are all the
Skeptic
answers?
was actually admitting to problems that were overwhelming her,
Okay. good point.
because it feels she has the skills.
So that's really interesting.
And you know, I think actually she said it without realising that she was admitting to that.
Do we think that that could be one of the reasons why people are skeptics in this area?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's good. So that's you pointing out what is going on behind behaviour. So behind that behaviour is actually somebody who feels very overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So I think that's a brilliant observation. Okay.
Leader was asking what she finds are the issues and what strategies she's using, and gives over ways and reasons to why this will work.
So that is that again activating the person, asking them what they already do. Did you
Yes,
say?
yeah.
So that
Yeah.
was down here. So that does
Yeah.
seem to be something that works. Did it seem to work?
Actually, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
good. Okay.
Because that's all of a sudden we kind of realised that, you know, she wasn't quite sceptic anymore.
So I think what you're describing was the skeptic feeling like she didn't know enough about NVR.
Yes.
So like then you sort of put her back in the expert role a wee bit, so it's about confidence.
Yeah.
So maybe the skeptic lacks confidence or knowledge. Maybe she doesn't like to feel that way. So that could just be a basic thing, or maybe that feels uncomfortable. At the end of the day, you're a teacher, you're supposed to know everything, you know?
Yep.
So we're back to the emotions. So overwhelmed, uncomfortable, maybe. Anyway, carry on. What else did you see?
Basically, a leader stayed calm. That actually calmed the skeptic.
Right, good. So, so she was being more Michael.
Yes.
Brilliant. Okay. Any comments, Mrs. Skeptic, about any of those reflections?
I think I felt cared.
Lovely.
So I wanted to rant.
Uh-huh.
And I think it was a bit something we said earlier, and I like to think of myself as a very solution-oriented practitioner, but I do believe we need to listen to the pain. So I did need a bit of emotional thumping.
Yep.
And I think I felt acknowledged and heard. And I don't think if I hadn't been heard and Caitlin really said, you know, I understand how hard that must be. I too, she almost empathised, I too been in that situation. A bit of empathy there that made me think, oh, she's got me. She's heard me and kind of calmed down, I think. And then I'm able to think.
I'm wondering why as a skeptic it's important for you to be cared in terms of emotions.
Yeah.
Think
I think I just,
that you're important in this whole system.
Yeah, I just
You matter.
Maybe we were saying about that. We were saying about NVR in the system. We were talking about, I need to feel that I've got a connection with you, you know, and there's a relationship with you as staff as well, you know. Because we were saying how in a school system you find like-minded people, don't you, you know, and if you come across a skeptic, then only through your connection and building relationships and NVRing the system, I guess, if you will, might you then move that person along a wee.
It's children, whether it's families or whether it's.
Because if I hadn't felt listened to or cared, then I wouldn't have felt I belonged and that I was just isolated in the school system then, because I'm the only one that maybe feels this way. You know?
It's like connect before you break as well,
Yeah.
isn't it? It works for adults as well as
Yeah. But we were just in practice with huge ones. I'm thinking about Michael's examples. We need to have that. If you've got a two-way relationship with a staff member and a skeptic, another staff member, then it is about that connection.
When you say practice, perhaps that means doing NVR, modelling NVR, whatever.
Yeah.
So
we're back to talk about connections. So almost visualising it and what is it that's in the way of our connection, and then how sort of visualising whether or not you're back to being connected. Well, thank you very much. It's a good thought. Yeah. Who was the observer here? What did you see?
Very expensive. Open to the discussion at first.
Any sense of why?
No, but you could feel it. You feel it's not open, and it could be because just what we're saying there, and that's what we normally find with staff. It's not that they don't want to. It's just that it's just they're afraid sometimes of the change and the stepping outside their comfort zone, and that's part of being the leader of a senior management team. It's about making people feel safe and comfortable to try new things, and that is about that's what we're going to create a climate of people being not afraid to try something. Yeah, it might not work the first time, yeah, it might escalate behaviours, but we should be allowing staff and supporting staff to try something new. And I think we were very close to that initially. So it doesn't work. Oh, that's not fun. You made very calm, very regulated. Even though you said you might feel like that before. Spoke about a lot about removing the barriers, and a really important thing was you highlighted the behaviour and not the child. So you took away you depersonalised it. Yeah. It was just around about the behaviour. You spoke about relationship building. This is important. The relationships. What have we done before? And again, same thing. Just what's worked previously. Yeah. Is there anything you've done in a similar situation that's worked previously? So yes. And you started coming around to it. To try. But it is quite difficult because you wouldn't normally if somebody was coming to you to have this, you'd have that relationship with the person, you would have more context, you would be able to say but it was really good just to observe, I think. So
I think that's a really good list of the awkward.
She was broke, she was, you're not. That's
very, very positive. I think the point about language is a really good one. So talking about barriers, not getting drawn in, you can imagine that people do get drawn into, if there is blocked care, it could well become a bit of a personality thing about the child.
Depersonalise it.
Yeah. So the importance of language is a really good point as well. Skeptic, anything that you felt was going on behind your behaviour? I know it was reacting, but did you think there was anything?
You find very hard to persuade me, think myself and give her the answer really that she would want to provide me with. I wouldn't let her in.
Do you know why? In a sense that you just acting.
I'm just being really close to it. Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay.
And tell children in school.
So there probably is there are probably just people like that who just haven't had that experience, have they? But are we back to the Gracies? That actually some people have lived quite a charmed life and they actually don't have that knowledge of sympathy for some families. And then it's kind of cultural almost, isn't it? So again, that's a blockage. So how do we educate people out of that?
There's changing the culture in the school, and that's what's being asked something. Those strong relationships and culture in your school. It's you can't just put one thing in, it's a whole. We all connected, interconnected. Yes, as they always talk about doing it. Yeah, it's upskilling your staff. Yeah, upskilling your staff, make them feel confident, be able to manage.
And I think it's a small people, absolutely. Some members of staff, because initially you might just get absolutely the doors closed, don't want to go there, but when they actually see it working and slowly in action, then they go, and this, I mean, we can just observe it,
There's a smaller
and then
chip.
we try,
So it is down to experience. So experience can be a block because you've not had that experience, you're determined not to. It can also be the thing that changes things. So seeing things happening. So I suppose the place that we want to get to with people is that they don't become a block, but they are neutral and they watch. Then how do we actually activate them then to reflect, I wonder? So yeah. Brilliant, thank you again. That. This group, who was the observer? Yes, any comments that you about the buildings?
Very much kind of on those aspects of that old authority, you know, how come they get this, that, whatever, you know, they're doing this in the classroom and they get taken out and given this, and you know, they were in your office and now they're back.
Poor Alison.
I know. And went on as well. The school isn't what it used to be, you know, when it happened. Yes, and Alison went on to then, you know, explain, start with like what actually Rnvr is, and I think kind of from there to just have a kind of more and sit down and chat about this is the relation aspects, and this is why this is so important. I think there needs to be such an education on the core aspects of Rnvr and why this is happening, which I think is where you were definitely going with that.
Yeah.
I think there also maybe needs to be, maybe where Sharon was coming from, is that almost as a member of staff, we all live such busy lives, have such busy days. Sometimes our staff really aware of what happens when that child is taken. Maybe there needs to be kind of more communication as to what is happening, but then I suppose equally you could argue, but there shouldn't be, you shouldn't have to, there should be that expectation of, you know, I'm the same position. So yeah, it was interesting, but I think like you're absolutely right, it's time, isn't it? And we kind of went on then to discuss, we'd hopefully have all your staff sat down and have time to go over things in reasonable depth and at the staff's own pace, to develop that understanding. And we were talking about maybe the biggest hurdle being that, yeah, you can't change something. It's a long process, and I think that's the biggest battle with staff. If we've got big classes, which a lot of schools do, and maybe a couple of children in each class, it's that I need to see a change now. I'm drowning, I can't see that. And I think sometimes almost for staff, that's they're always constantly wanting more. They're looking for, you know, and no one's got that golden cup as such. Yeah, but yeah, I think burnt out and at kind of the end of your tether, and just that desperation for an answer, and yeah.
Teachers like the night was doing not like when they're moving on, they was in a classroom. How would that animation classroom? How would that with children? So do you think you're still maintaining your presence for that one child? Are the rest of the children seeing your presence the minute? Because it appears that
is that communicating with the rest of the children?
I thought we've spoken a lot about staff and adults all working in Rnvr, but the rest of the mainstream classroom, there seems to be kids in that class with game space and they're really doing all their best, but the rest of the children, some staff are feeling a lack of competence.
Yeah, I think, communication's coming through quite a lot. A lot of people we were also saying, just think of anything we haven't answered, and we'll try and do that by the end of the day. Okay, so communication with the other children, probably communication with parents is something quite a lot, communication with staff. What are the nuts and bolts things are? Any other, so what I've tried to do not very well, but is to sort of red, these are the problems, but I've also underlined the green if they're the solution. So building on a skeptic's expertise is something that come up a lot. Being daring, that can be annoying sometimes. You're asking something outside my comfort zone, but you're right, absolutely. If you can get a system whereby people feel like they're okay to try things out and maybe make mistakes, what a difference it makes. Communication, focusing on the why, you know, that can be, because that can align you even when you've got somebody who's a bit, you know, stuck in the old authority. The reason why is the same. And thinking about language, all of us constantly think about language. And then we were talking a little bit about what was going on behind what people were saying. I think overwhelm is often the case. feeling uncomfortable or lacking confidence. So not being the expert in the room, particularly if you are one of the older folk who, you know, has always stood your ground, suddenly you've been asked to do this thing you don't quite understand. And I think one of you here had said that they'd sent their biggest skeptics on the 3-day training. And did that help? Okay, so
Seen that here.
good. So,
Definitely did.
thanks.
Again, it's because
It was
they were
ours.
trained
Good.
and because they knew they were going to have to put it into practice, which they did. Even it was coming on. But I'm going to keep coming back to this. I believe they said the whole staff in the training, they would come round to it, rather than I'm going to come back with these good ideas and hit you with them.
Yeah.
I know when the whole school implementation takes place, so
Get the EP in, and you do it together, hopefully in person.
There is a slight resistance
Yeah.
to EP as well, I'm not going to
Just
lie.
no,
You know,
no, yes, yes, I know.
the ideas, you know, and it says at the chalk face,
Yeah.
you know, so I don't mean that,
No,
you know what I mean.
Most because we're teachers, we know how it used to feel.
Yeah, and it's a great relationship, don't get
Yeah,
me
yeah,
wrong,
yeah.
and most skeptical. But all of the I'm thinking of again, the most skeptic, and
Yeah.
like, and when I went into the role play, I was the person that was, I am a good teacher.
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
have it. And when they do arise, they go to management.
Yeah.
That's a whole, you're talking communication,
Yeah.
a free change of idea.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
putting it back, it's such a delicate balance between the well-being of the child and the staff.
Yeah.
We've had two resign
I think that's happening.
in Bridget Weir. And it wasn't just work, it was other stuff. But I'm just, it's a very delicate balance. And Facebook doesn't help people go to your union. You're not getting supported, you know.
So recently in the nursery, the deputy came along to the level 1 training, loved it, wanted to do whole school. But at the same time, I was delivering VERP groups with the whole staff. So the VERP groups looks at interactions and relationships, and what the deputy and the head had realised was staff's confidence was really, really low because there was more complex needs in the nursery environment. People were feeling overwhelmed, or were feeling that I'm not able to support these children, we're doing them a disservice, etc., etc. So she really wanted to try and build on staff confidence because she knew the staff were doing a good job. Yes, there's times when things don't go so well, but that always happens. But she had the confidence in her staff. So I had suggested coming in and doing a VERP group, and we've done it before in a primary school. And I think there's plans to do in another primary school where the psychologist gets to meet every member of staff and works on video clips. And they focused on challenging behaviour. So they would go off and make their own video clip and come back. So I had 4 sessions with them. So that's how they used my time over the course of a month. Well, it was 2 months actually because of the 2 groups. And I would go back and we would look at the video clips. So it gave me opportunities to talk about this kind of approach and situations, but it also gave them an opportunity to reflect on their own practice. And when they first came along, they were like, we're being made to do this. Some of them, see in the room, were like, this is an absolute joke. But by the end, they loved it. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Like they now use videos, they reflect on each other's practice in the room so much more, stuff that they would never have done before. They began to notice and take forward themselves. And I think that helped with the whole relationship with EP, because normally I wouldn't meet every member of staff, because there isn't a need to, unless the school or the establishment see my role as being able to reach other people. And I would say that made a big difference then to when I did the whole school implementation, because people in the room felt they knew me a bit better, so they could ask me questions a bit more, maybe some of the challenging questions. But also one woman at the end came up and said, I can just relate to you, and I think it's from the fact I knew you before you came in and spoke to me about this. So I noticed a big difference in the way that relationship was. Yeah,
and it is hard because we do have to divide up our time, obviously. So, but I think there are ways and means of getting to know. But I mean, at the end of the day, it will always be you and not the EP that makes the difference, because they aren't as trustworthy as you. We just aren't, because we're not well known. We try to feed it into listen when at all possible. I think if we could get more conversation about NVR and listen, it would build confidence. And genuinely, if you were feeling overwhelmed as a senior member of staff, genuinely go along to listen and say, look, I know all this NVR talks coming up my ears, but I'm stuck, and you should get support from the group with new ideas and so on. So these are the kind of things we're trying to build in. And we're having some success. We can share some of that with the later on. We've got a few schools that are further down the road.
That's right, again, when Bridget was talking about things with us about the support to staff on a kind of smaller group, sort of contact volunteer, those who want to come along and not being sent to come along, maybe overlaying it with video, kind of like what you did, and overlaying it with a go away and bring back a clip, tuned clip, and let's discuss it.
I mean, that's fantastic if you could do the BERT, but I mean, if you could remember the NVR light, there's no reason why you couldn't sit down as part of your practitioner inquiry and get volunteers to come on, just work your way through that workbook as a group. There are also the REN10 websites on the practitioner's page. We're trying to upload more and more information. You've got little YouTube films from Gordon trying to explain each of the, you know, what is strike while arms cold, etc. And you can watch those little bits and then have a discussion. I mean, I keep on saying this, but the GIRFEC resilience tool is just really, really helpful. When I used that with the girl who had those anxious thoughts, it really was a trying us out thing, you know, but as we worked our way through it, we came up with loads of solutions. So it could be that you just like, not sure. So it's kind of getting alongside people, I think, and just, you know, actually exploring NVR together. You're right, Vicky, and just saying, okay, you maybe don't feel confident, but let's look at it together. So it's all about time though, get all of that, so and planning time and stuff. So that's in there. Hopefully that was a wee bit helpful. And
we just think it's
yes, like I agree. Yeah, it's got to be
all about the outcomes of children. People before, so you know, and go back to everyone was like, ultimately that's why we're doing it.
Yeah,
and then how can you dissent against that?
I know. And I think if people understand families, and some things are families, sometimes I think that the VR headsets do seem to be coming out as something that do help skeptics to kind of move on a little bit, but we don't impose those. It's very much a choice, but they do seem to be helping people to just go, what I didn't realise it's like this, you know. And so
yes, about best hopes, just to hear something and thinking when you get to a shared point, well, what are our best hopes about this situation and and when you get on this, my hopes the same as yours.
Yes.
All here for the same reason. That's why we all start. Yeah, and if you start, we'll kind of we're in this together. Let's make it better. We want to know what your best hopes are.
See, while we're on that,
unite.
I just think that when we were all doing the attainment chapter, we were really, really clear what equity and equality was. And I think we've lost that. And I, you know, when you come back to these conversations with parents or class, you know, we have to be clear in our own heads what's the difference between equity and equality, and we have to make sure that we understand that yes, some kids need that box to stand on, and how do we rationalise that with our colleagues? And I think we've got to keep coming back to that, or else people won't understand why some kids seem to be getting through. That's a whole other conversation.
It's about that sharing that faith in my exactly. Yeah, that's
We've got last wee bit of slides to get through, and then we're going to think about looking ahead and how we plan for how we're moving forward, and how as a team we're going to move forward. But first of all, I just want to do the last bit about risk and risky behaviour, and thinking about contextual safeguarding. So what are the other risks that are out there for children? So there's child sexual exploitation, missing children, gangs, grooming, criminal exploitation, and that's not an exhaustive list. So there's many things out there that are risky for our children. And this model is quite nice. I think it ties really well in with NVR, in particular if you look at domain 3 there. And in this domain, we're actually thinking about, or within the whole model, it considers the social context of extra familiar pressures that lead to abuse, but it asks really thought-provoking questions of those around, so those that are in control of situations. So if gang members meet up around a particular shop, what are the shop doing to unite in terms of how are they supporting it, or how are they not supporting the vulnerable children and our young people? in our communities. And so if we're thinking about then NVR in terms of safeguarding, it is about that idea that NVR takes account of the family pressures often caused or heightened by extra familiar pressures and addresses these by helping to raise parental presence. So it's about looking at safeguarding through that NVR lens and thinking about and taking account of all the pressures that are within families, things that we might not think about. And then it's using those different resources or those different supports like the telephone round or the tailing to help parents to raise their presence, so talking them through what that might look like in particular situations. And I remember it was recently, I think it was you and I, that was delivering the level 1 training, and we talked about vigilant care and the tailing and the telephone rounds. And we were saying it's maybe not something that you might use as a professional in school, but it's certainly something we talk more about parents. And one of the feedback from one of the participants was actually, I really like the idea of being able to tell parents that they can do these things and that they're allowed, because quite often parents might take a step back because of the scared or they're accommodating, or they might not think they have the right because of children's rights and all of these things. So actually she felt that NVR gave a really nice structure for her to be able to talk about this. I think she had a particular family in mind where they did struggle in terms of putting the vigilant care in place, or the telephone rounds, or looking at the phone, all of these things. And we've talked about secrecy and privacy and where the line is drawn and how can we protect our children. So it trains parents in how to raise their presence even when the child is engaging in that risky or dangerous behaviour. NVR focuses on the development of the support networks. So it is about those people round about. Who can we unite with? Could we go and have a conversation with the person in the shop at the corner? Could we go and speak to other family members? Are there other people that can support us? Would some of the professionals in school know more about things that are happening in the community because they hear from different parents? Some parents might think they're alone in what's happening. In fact, we know that most do. It opens up some more doors in terms of that. So NVR can help in identifying and recruiting supportive family and friends. We do recommend involving members of the wider community in making it safe for young people. We've also spoken about the neighbour before that the family spoke to, because she was always worried about what the neighbour thought of all the arguments that were happening in the house, and she didn't want to escalate things because the neighbour would be thinking, I need to phone social work, or these kind of ideas. So that then put more pressure on her to accommodate, and etc., etc. And when she actually had a conversation with the neighbour, he then went back, and one day there was flowers left outside the doorstep, and it was his way of saying, I'm on board and I'll help you as much as I can. Parents draw on support networks to raise the presence within the physical, extra familiar environments, to visit these sites of potentially risky behaviours, not to confront or demand their child return home, but to register their strength and presence. So this isn't one where we would be suggesting that the parent goes up and picks them up in front of all the friends. It would be that planned strategic element that Michael spoke a lot about today as well, and that you would have a plan for when these things happened. And it was the same as one of our colleagues talking about setting up a WhatsApp group between parents, where they knew that the daughters were planning all to stay out, but they were pretending they were to arranging at each other's houses, and somebody got wind of that, and so a group was set up. And again, it's just that I'm going to make things tighter. I'm going to increase the supervision when I think you're at risk. But it's about that loving message that we talked about this morning, that I'm doing this not as a punishment, but because I love you so much. So ensuring that connection is still there, even when we are, and Michael spoke about that as well, ensuring the connections, always giving out those relational gestures, even when there are situations where things are really quite challenging. And it's about that ecological support network, so everybody that's round about and how they can support each other. So we're going to move on, and Fiona,
yeah, it doesn't take long. Actually, just to say to you that you're not alone with NVR. I think I said to you, NVR first came along as part of the Peer Experience Fund, and then it moved into different funds, but it's been linked up with various different initiatives over the course of the last 4 years. All of HomeLink are trained up to level 2, as are all of Families First. We have the YMCA in third sector, and we're putting out feelers for other partners in the third sector to come on board. So they're all able to run parent groups or to help you in parent groups, and I have to say, majority of them are dead keen on it. They will also be able to do one-to-one and NBR Light, but like us, have to negotiate in terms of what are your priorities with your HomeLink person or your Families First. You might know that Families First is now Renfrewshire wide, working on under 9s, 8s, but obviously there's only 7, so to be Renfrewshire wide is quite incredible. But their expertise, everybody knows Families First, they're very much aware of families who are coming through some really tough circumstances, and they're incredibly compassionate colleagues to have. I would say they're getting more and more confident with NBR, and they're actually excellent. So some of these people, I would say third sector people, would prefer to help you in a group. You prefer to help you in a group because they're not necessarily at the same kind of level as yourselves. They're great, and they often have venues, and they can sometimes be available in the evenings. So it's really just, if you got to a point where you thought, I want to run a group, but I know it's not, it's not a good idea to run on my own. We also have some parent graduates. We have 3 parent graduates. Certainly 2 of those women are very keen to help run a group. One of them's available during the day. It's always tricky with parent graduates because you want to pay them and you can't really pay them. That's all part but. You can give them little presents, you can give them flowers, you can say thank you, etc., etc. Worked out what those kind of gestures could be like and could mean, and they actually in general are just really keen to get on board. And it might be that if you bring your own parents through, then you can actually use them, which would be a wonderful thing. We will always listen to you if you email us and say to us, if we just need a bit of help with this, if you to suggest up to us, or if you say, if I just got this person trained up, it will make a big difference to our situation, contact us, we will make an effort because you're now level 2. You're the people that want to really help push this forward and get it embedded in some way or other, where you're either running your own parent groups or you're running the whole school thing. So you don't tell anybody that you're now our favourites. So, and don't forget the Ren10 space, which is how you can get parents referred, but they need to really refer themselves. Sooner or later, they will be asked, do you want to be in this group? And they just tell us in the board no if you refer them. So, and have not really been on board. The other thing is, while the central list was there for a good purpose, particularly during COVID, we're finding that generally it doesn't work the best because you just don't have relationships. So we're phoning them up a bit cold, and they're kind of like, yeah, well, I thought I wanted to do that, I'm not sure anymore. And also they have to wait quite well sometimes, and in which case kind of off the boil. So anything you can do locally or find locally, again, let us know. We will try and support you in setting anything up locally. That's our we want to watch to get that going. Space people that work with, so they're working with, looked after children at home. They're all level 2. Level 1. And we also have Mark Coyle, who's in the social work training team. He is not far off the same level as us. He's very keen, very supportive. So Space understand NBR, they know about NBR. They would be good supporters if you're looking for that unite. If you've got a parent who's quite isolated, if you happen to have a space worker, you can say, oh, Space know about this, get them on board. They'd be really good supporters. They might not be able to lead it or run NBR Lights, but they certainly would support you, so they're good for that too. We've had some after school care people come in the training. Anybody who's been in level 1 could be a good supporter. Anybody at all would be a good supporter in that. And we are beginning to open up, we just open up the training to anybody that it feels like from our communities could really make a difference. Is that enough? There are a few other services like this, of course. You could just know more about vacancies. Yes. So what we do, you probably know this, but we always have 2 spaces at all of our training for social work. And the idea is, I think we've more or less got through this, so that the whole of social work. So the idea is that if anybody suggested NBR with their families, they would be on board and they would be supportive, and they would be sort of along suggesting consequences and punishments if you're thinking something that you're thinking, so it should be like that. And again, if it's not, then either just say to them, contact the NBR team or the trainings. That's why we try to do it in product with 360. Any questions? Yeah. So we have tried, and what I would say is there's a general feeling that they want it. The managers are very keen. I think it's quite hard in the moment to make that happen. I think about how hard we're finding it. I guess in a residential situation, we've had several conversations about getting it in. I think in the next couple of years we will. But at the moment, that's not the case. But again, it depends. If we find that that's a really key person, because it's really important, then what we would have done at the beginning, we were much more methodical about this, I think, but if you would have actually done an information event, and then you would have brought that person along, and they would very much see, or they'd have heard about it or whatever, and they would say, oh yeah, that's what you mean by NVR, but you might not know the detail. You're just sort of giving them, well, if you could just do this, if you could just follow up on this, these are those characteristics. It's almost like a parent, isn't it, at the beginning, until they get best Yeah. I don't see any reason why they couldn't come in our level 1. The problem is when you go in and try to do whole stuffing, trying to get out of what they're actually doing as a day job. I would have thought as a one-to-one, they could have maybe come along to see the day. So again, maybe suggest it to them. They'd be very, very welcome. Any other questions? Great stuff. That was. You can.
I guess is it just interesting while we're up here, you've already started thinking yourselves about kind of what you think. How many of you are thinking that a parent group might be something that you might be thinking about doing in the future? Show of hands, you maybe most say most of it. So I think just to give you an idea of some of the ways that the groups are working now, as Fiona said, we've been working on the central list, but there are some locality groups coming, and that's kind of the direction that we see things moving in the future, hopefully. But all groups require a lead facilitator, who's usually somebody trained at least level 2 and who has a bit of confidence around using NVR. Preferably they've kind of like shadowed the group before. So like for yourselves, you might want to kind of couple up with somebody else and kind of like be your first time just to kind of get more confident. And we would always have, even when we do it, we'd never do it on our own. It's always good to have at least one other person there, just because you get put on the spot so much. It's really good to have those 2 heads are better than one sometimes to get through some of these problems. And also if it's a bigger group, you can be able to split up and have more in-depth conversations. Yeah, so one of these other kind of, or some, there's a few people, if you're thinking of, we will come to kind of the back of all the coaching and stuff on board as well, so we'll be able to plan with you who's best sort of situated to support you in your sort of locality. And I suppose if there's a few people get trained to level 2 in different neighbouring schools, you could even get together and kind of join up, if you like, and have a kind of a cluster group or something like that. That was informed.
We've experimented with the numbers too, and tried slightly bigger groups and smaller groups, and generally we find, you've got a long list of parents to phone and the quite not commit, but then you end up with fewer that actually attend for the duration. But we found it's probably about 6 or 8 are optimal. And then you can have really nice conversations and you can provide the level of support. So we generally aim for about 6 or 8.
Yeah, but we quite often kind of like we'll kind of have conversations with 10, knowing that only 6 or 8 will turn up. It's like, and it's very weird that everybody who says they're going to, we've learned the hard way after having run quite a few groups with only like a few, like 3 parents and as many facilitators as there are parents, to kind of ask for more, and then kind of like, some people with best intentions.
And also, if you've got more than one facilitator, you might have to do a few catch-ups, because sometimes parents commit to the 8 weeks but they miss a session, and they still want to engage, so then you'll do a little individual session. Sometimes we do that beforehand, before the group starts, come in a bit earlier, and then we cover the content, we refer them to the videos. But it is nice to be able to keep that momentum going. So we need extra people to be able to do that.
But when you run your groups, you've got facilitators tracks all there, so all the information, the kind of like the PowerPoints themselves, schedules, kind of like examples of letters and things like that you send out is all kind of there for you. It is a good idea to tailor that to your own, your own style or whatever, and you have to be flexible when you're thinking about delivering the program. So we kind of usually have, it's usually an 8-week program.
But as we kind of explained when we were doing it with Rnvr, for example, and the groups like to be running in May Russell over the summer, because of the needs of that group, they kind of had to modify that. So there may be things, particularly if you're focusing on a group of parents, for example, that are all kind of got children who are experiencing anxiety, you might want to kind of like shift and tailor the content a little bit to kind of suit whichever groups that you're working with. But all that information will be kind of readily available. We're finding kind of like we've got it in terms of we can email it out, but we're looking at a way that we can make that more central, perhaps through Teams or through the website and that, so that you can get access to things. And that will kind of be something that we can discuss as we go through the coaching later on. Every session has homework, so there's always some task, even if it's just like self-care or, between now and next week, we're asking parents to kind of like have tried out a relational gesture or have started to kind of think about the elements of their basket or their announcement or whatever it is. We try to kind of teach all the parts of the Rnvr programme, even if they're not kind of going to necessarily want to engage in a full-scale campaign. We want them to have all the skills to go away with, because it might not be appropriate now, but like a few months down the line or years down the line, they might go and hang on, let's pull that back out again and have another look at that, because I wasn't ready for an announcement back then. I think maybe this is something that I need to know now. So
we gather all that information throughout the groups and put it into a campaign plan. So the parents receive a campaign plan at the end of the group. So even if they've not actively used anything, they've got the campaign plan to refer back to at a later stage if they need to. And we found that some parents come back and want to revisit a particular section or come back for the whole duration because, something shifted or they need some more support. So it is an ongoing, for some families, an ongoing process.
And we usually allow a bit of time. So people will be at different stages when they get to the end of the week, or however long the sessions are. Some people will be kind of like absolutely sort of like, right, everything's in place. I've got my supporters. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to do a message campaign. We'll do this announcement. Then we've got so and so giving a message and so and so thing looking out for the siblings. And then I'm going to respond to. We've got it all ready to go. Others will be much further behind in terms of kind of like the stage that they're at. So we usually like to have a sort of reconnector sort of like further on down the line to kind of like catch up with people again, see how they're going. Because questions will have come up in the meantime. Not everybody will be going out the same level of confidence at the end of the 8 weeks.
And often at that point, you can start to gauge impact and start to see if there has been any kind of little shift, and then you can offer further support. But quite often at the end of the 8 weeks, as Lisa said, they leave at a particular point, and only when they've had a chance to really grapple with some of their thoughts and try a few things, and then you start to see, if there has been any kind of shift.
So just things to consider is just about kind of like who you're going to target, kind of like how you're going to kind of judge whether or not they're ready for this, because they do need to, as we said before, they do need to have bought into it. It's not something you can force them into. If, like they are making a commitment to kind of like putting in place changes, which can be really challenging. So how are you going to foster that? How are you going to create a safe space? Whereas have you got some place that's kind of not observed that people are going to, because it can be almost on a regular basis, there are tiers that are kind of like, there are kind of like disclosures and kind of not safe disclosures too often, thankfully, but like just like that whole awareness and even thinking, what are you going to do if somebody does disclose something? That's kind of how are you going to kind of tackle that conversation. So as with everything in Rnvr, it's all in the planning and it's all about thinking ahead of time, but there's lots there to support you with that to that point.
And there is ongoing coaching, as Lisa mentioned, that you can bring any questions to or anything you're struggling with, or to revisit any aspects of the content. So the coaching sessions usually occur weekly online, and while you're running your group, you're tapping in out that.
But we are also looking at kind of having one of our colleagues, Leslie Weeks, kind of a very experienced practitioner running her own healing groups out of West, and Leslie, but I think she's potentially a date as of last week, hopefully. Which is a strong armour, honestly. To kind of like be a kind of a bit of a mentor as well and a bit of a coach. So there'll be more information coming out to you about how that might work after the summer.
And as the evaluations, obviously you've got links for questionnaires for pre and post. It's, I mean, like we'll talk in a minute. I think we're going to talk about kind of like in terms of if you're using this as part of your RNRA accreditation, you know, it's important to kind of evaluate and gather your impact data as well. So we can help supply you with kind of the same measures that we're using, the same measures. All people agree with those. Is there any questions? Anything that's kind of like before we kind of like get to your planning? Something any specific questions about community groups? Kind of a bit of a concern or anything. You see it here, advocate a letter to all parents. I guess an approach might be to kind of ask what parents are interested in. And you don't always know at face value which parents are maybe struggling. Or whether or not you're kind of going to kind of approach individuals that you already kind of have said to you that they're in need of that support.
Yeah, it's done very much with asking. Obviously, everybody's a bit different. Lots of different characters. Just a lot of them. I was asked to run what names. That's a big area. Even then, I was beginning to pick up. You know, some people didn't want to have a flow in the school to know the problems. So I can totally get that. So one of the things we've been stressing is maybe, like, for example, Erskine Primaries get together as a cluster and have one parent group, and as a group of head teachers, they decide how they're going to sacrifice that person's time in inverted commas. You know, that's an interesting idea. And then it also means that parents are maybe being mixed up a little bit. Again, not everybody would go on that. Some people would rather go to Paisley and have a bit of anonymity. I think it's just about opening up those ideas so people have options.
It's an idea that there might be one in Paisley Grammar after the summer, and it's related around transitions and anxieties for children and parents of kids that are going into S1. So we're looking at how many parents will that be. Can we open that up wider within the cluster? So there's all things starting to, so that would be myself, I think, supporting that group, but alongside the home link worker. And the idea would be that I would support that in the hope that then that would be taken forward to something that the school do within house. And then we have coaching to support that.
So the idea would might be to listen to them. You know, unless you think you've got a cohort ready to go, then you might want to discuss lessons, see what this look like.
Sorry, you still have a centralised list. So, you know, if you have capacity and it's within your locality, then
we've always got parents waiting. So for our staff, for example, we will just say who wants experience in Rnvr, nothing like building your confidence in Rnvr, here to running a parent group, honestly. So if you just want to throw your hat in the ring, we would be delighted to welcome you to that, and you probably end up doing it for us. But it does give you a chance to sort of learn.
I think she said that I'm very keen to think of it as much as we can in our cluster locality basis and try to keep it that sense of who's trained, who's keen, who's out there, where are our supporters, if you will.
Level two would be the ones that you're a first cohort over the first next year. So, and that's exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about almost an enhanced group. So apart from yourselves, I would say St Paul's, St Charles, and West, St Fergus would be the ones. So again, all primaries. Yes,
level two expertise, and I'm saying actually we need to be tapping into and really kind of.
I think listen is your. I like it. And you can use that for just maybe our conversation going.
Yes, you've got one mention for to come along and shadow, see what when did they run? So you don't
no, yeah. So that's the thing, we have to just work out, so we contact parents and ask them when is best for them, and then that does restrict us then about the local parents. But if you had an interest and you were available at certain point yourselves when you're available.
We try to kind of give a range, so at the moment, the way that we would find it, we just have got enough experience facility to run as many groups, was trying to have a mix of daytime and evening and online and face to face, so kind of like
a daytime face-to-face, a daytime online, an evening face-to-face, and an evening online course was the dream. It hasn't quite happened like that. But yes, they're all
as things become busier, it's harder. But if we get back to that,
Is there any kind of sense from your initial valuation as to whether things prepare face-to-face or
some
again, it would depend if it was pension you or pension. I'm just trying to think, we have that option of virtual.
personally having facilitated those, I think this gives them their quality because most of them are doing online because they can't get childcare and there's always kind of
Things
kids
going
about in the background. And
I don't think
no, exactly.
Everybody's talking, everybody's looking at each other.
And plus, everything comes through facilities for them when you're online. Whereas when you're face to face, they'll go and have a wee chat, or when you're busy and stuff like that, they make links with each other more.
I'm just thinking of some parents who prevent them in terms of their safe first statement, that's totally.
About that, but I think it's thinking a lot about parents. The last couple of years, so I think lots of family anniversaries up to would you say the parents to be open with their child? Because I know there's a couple who won't want their child to know they're coming. It's like or coming to the school home. Would you try and encourage them to be open and say? We haven't been specific, but I think a lot of parents do. They kind of mum's going to this group, like the younger kids, your mum's going to this group to try and help her be able to help you more, and that's what the group's for, sort of thing. And certainly, that one of the examples from the group that you've just run, she did say to the child when she was trying to get them to make changes in their behaviour was kind of like, I've been going to this group that's been helping me and it's been trying to make us be happier at home. Well, this is one of the things that's come from it. And it kind of was a way to introduce that change as to why she was behaving differently. So,
and one of the things we've done as a group, that's really again trying to tackle that and get really involved with someone who is members of past. Sometimes it's somebody through something and we've done that actually a few times. And it's nice getting it because it's a little bit childcare. What's with that? The appropriate.
Yeah.
Anything that helps is going to come on.
Yeah, or River Brave. Yeah, after the summer is that we do a twilight session that runs simultaneously to some of the after school clubs. So that the young people an interesting consideration is your relationship with the parents, because you are then often wearing a different hat. And we had to navigate this with the River Brave staff in our parent group. In the first session, Lisa and I tended to share a lot about our own families and our own journey, and we hadn't navigated with them how willing they were to share and where they were at in terms of that. They were very forthcoming and very happy to join in, but I just was aware at that point that it is a group where you talk a lot and you share a lot, and and we found some of the benefit has been that we've been able to trial it in our own homes and share examples of that, but there is a vulnerability in that. And if you're the deputy or the head, you might not be wanting to disclose that to a group of parents who you have a different relationship with. So just something interesting to consider and to explore.
So what you've heard about, but in that way that usually in a more kind of, so down south in the really experienced for lots of years of running things, they would almost always have a parent graduate present that kind of, and we don't have that. So and it's a little bit about taking ourselves out of the equation as the experts. It's like you're the expert on your child. I'm not trying to tell you what to do here. I know a bit about Rnvr and together we're going to work towards this, and this is a totally non-judgmental space. Is that actually I'm a parent as well. I'm not saying that I've been a perfect parent. No, everybody has and kind of allowing that veil of secrecy or whatever to kind of rise by just allowing a little bit of your own story out in order to kind of help them feel comfortable and kind of being kind of out and transparent about what they're going. It's just a consideration because it is kind of like also about kind of keeping yourself safe in doing that, and what are you okay with sharing and what aren't you, kind of what kind of
there was also a real value in being able to say, you know, in the school we see this and this is what we do, and you know, that partnership and that support from the school and to the parent and vice versa. You know, there's a real space where there could be some gentle challenge, but some real in-depth conversations that were helpful.
I think we'll have a coffee break before we do our last bit, but just before we go for a break, is there anything that is still in somebody's minds about that we've not covered yet, or any question that anybody's got, just so we can have a look at any slides we need to fill up after break, so we're meeting everybody's needs? Is there anything you can think of? Or as you're having your coffee, let us know if there's anything that pops into your mind that you've not answered as yet. So if we just